welcome to Season 8, Episode 7 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday, the 21st of April, and we're going to be discussing what's happening in the news and in the Ubuntu community. If you're listening live, which you're not because we're not going out live this week, who left that in there, you can send us messages, maybe another week. In the meantime, I'm Mark, and joining me this week are Laura.
Hello.
Alan.
Watcher.
And Martin.
Hello.
Hey.
Satellite delay to Martin.
We've not all been here yet before, have we?
No, it's first time for everyone.
No.
Yeah. Well, you're obviously a glutton for punishment, Martin, if you're back again.
Yeah, well, it's been fun.
Oh, good. Well, nice to know we haven't put you off too much.
No, I've had a good time,
Excellent.
and it's nice for you to invite me back again.
Oh,
nice.
Everyone's a friend here.
Yeah.
Laura, you sound a lot more with it this time.
A lot more with it. Did I sound really not with it last time?
Yeah.
You sounded like you might have just got stepped off a plane or something.
Yeah. I didn't think I did at the time, so oh dear.
Well, let's not draw attention to it, and
Let's move swiftly on.
And now it's time for the news. And our first news item this week is that Matthias Claesson has started a discussion on the GNOME release mailing list seeking to revive the development of GNOME 3 apps. He says that many of the new apps that have been developed to complement the GNOME Shell desktop, but some of them lack feature completeness that they seek to replace. So Matthias is suggesting community patch review days or identifying 5 easy tasks to get new developers on board with GNOME apps, but seeks other suggestions from the community.
so these the default shipping apps that you get with GNOME.
I think
They're
so. Yeah,
talking
there's like a big list of them on the GNOME wiki, and I think it includes some things which you'll know about, like the like GNOME Office-y type things, but also includes some other stuff which has been developed more recently. I think things that are called stuff like documents and boxes and music in the GNOME desktop.
Wonder what those could possibly
ego-free
be.
ways.
What are boxes?
I don't
It's
know.
a VM thing, I think.
Oh yeah.
It's for like virtual box type thing. Yes,
I find
everything's
it
reduced down to a
interesting-
single
sorry.
word. I think every app eventually in GNOME is going to be just a single letter, or maybe just a stroke of a pen, getting reduced down to the absolute simplest possible name.
So why are these all developed new?
Well,
Good question.
Some are new, and some are sort of re-implementations or consolidations and rationalizations of existing applications. And I find this, I'm not sure if I find it comforting that a team, relatively a larger team, the GNOME team than the Mate team, is having the same struggles that we have, or if I should be concerned because we rely on so much of the GNOME's upstream projects to build the Mate desktop on top of, not least, GTK3, for example.
It's part of it just like the waxing and waning of development. Like very few open source applications or libraries are at a constant, relentless cadence. They're some of them, wax and wane. People wander away. People come back. People get motivated to work on stuff, and then they go away again. Maybe.
I think the concern here is that with a lot of these, that's happened before they've actually become what they were supposed to be. It's not like they got to 1.0 release and then the maintainer said, okay, I'm going to work on something else. It's like they just sort of had a few point releases.
And what's the reception
they never
been
quite got where they were supposed
from
to
other
be.
people?
Well, there's been a few other people suggesting areas to focus on. I think someone suggested that basically they need to focus on finding people who are willing to be new maintainers rather than just people who are going to do some quick fixes here and there.
Well, keep an eye on that, I suppose. Tech news sites, including Engadget and Forward Geek, have published an apparently sourceless story that's following in its recent purchase of a minority stake of Cyanogen Inc., Microsoft will be bundling its Android apps with future releases of CyanogenMod. Cyanogen responded with a blog post completely refuting the claim and a related claim that CyanogenMod would start displaying adverts. Interesting. So,
Yes.
the claim was that because Microsoft are an investor in Cyanogen, then Cyanogen would start shipping loads of Microsoft apps in the like community maintained build, right?
In the
And as far as I
community
can tell-
build.
Yeah.
Because CyanogenMod is the open source flavour, so how can you have Microsoft's apps bundled in there?
And it won't.
Well, it won't.
That-
So
that
that's
was-
okay.
This is completely like if you read the story on Engadget, it points to the story on Forward Geek, which then just has some generic links at the bottom where you can quote read more. But it's just like the Cyanogen website and Google Plus page, which say absolutely nothing about it. So basically, they just made there was an April Fool's prank that they did where they released an update which had like powered by Microsoft on the update screen, and it seems like somebody's seen that and thought, oh my god, let's run a story.
Stunning bit of journalism there.
Yeah, it's really quite astounding.
But
that, you know,
they're not saying that it won't have Microsoft apps in Cyanogen OS, the proprietary build that gets shipped directly on devices. Is that what they're saying?
No, I think it's just that the CyanogenMod one won't.
Right.
what they have said is we are not bundling or pre-installing Microsoft or any Cyanogen OS exclusive partner apps into CyanogenMod.
Right.
So yes,
But they
things that might be in Cyanogen OS are not going to be in CyanogenMod.
But does CyanogenMod ship with GNOME apps? Google apps.
No.
So it doesn't ship with the
so.
Play Store or Google Play services. You have to go and get those
Can't
separately.
imagine.
No, yeah. If you are flashing a CyanogenMod onto your phone and you want Google stuff, you have to flash an additional ROM on top as well.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting. So that's a non-story. Moving on.
Microsoft has announced that Microsoft Open Technologies, a subsidiary set up to further Microsoft's engagement in the open source and open standard communities, will be absorbed into the parent company. That's Microsoft. In a blog post announcing the merge, Jean Powley of MS Open Tech summarised the group's achievements over the past 4 years and says the shift towards open source in Microsoft's own culture will allow the group to further community engagement from within.
This is good, isn't
Basically
it?
becoming part of main. Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke to Ross Gardler from MS Open Tech a couple of years ago on the show, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, this is in their blog post they say this means that from their point of view that they've done their job well,
Yeah.
and they've obviously now Microsoft's evolved enough that they don't have to create a separate company just in case that they do something too embarrassing.
Yeah.
What, like
they're-
make some open source contributions somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's the word? Plausible deniability.
Yeah, Microsoft seem to have a little bit of schizophrenia at the moment, though, because for every sort of pro open source, pro Linux announcement, there's then one that sort of flies in the face of that. So it's almost like there's still the left hand and the right hand that don't quite know what each other's doing at the moment. And I hope that maybe this new open Microsoft might prevail, but I think time will tell. I'm still a bit skeptical.
I think it's probably a slow process that, it takes a long time to turn a ship like that.
Undoubtedly.
And with a new...
Joys of large corporations.
Exactly. But with new leadership and the fact that there's lots of other things that they're doing very differently, things might be changing. And I know that some people in the Linux community, the bridge is burnt and there's no possible way Microsoft can turn themselves around. But, I think with new leadership and new strategies, perhaps they can, and they can be a better player in the open source community. Who knows?
Yeah.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation has published a report that Chris Roberts, a security researcher recently detained by the FBI for tweeting about compromising an airplane's internal communication systems, has been banned from flying with the airline. Roberts was detained earlier this month and had numerous electronic devices seized after he tweeted a message suggesting that he sent a false message to the aeroplane's crew alerting them of a fault. And then when attempting to board a flight to a security conference last week where he was meant to be speaking, United Airlines, who he'd flown with before, refused to let him fly again.
So what did he actually hack something and send a message, or did he say he was
entirely clear? Well,
he was going to, or he could?
Yeah, I think he was on the in-flight Wi-Fi, as you have on some planes these days, and then he tweeted a message about using this system. They used an acronym for there's a system which they have in planes. I'm sure Martin will know what I'm talking about from my 5 minutes reading Wikipedia. But basically, it monitors the systems and then alerts the crew to anything going wrong and suggests what they do to sort it out. And he said, "Oh, shall I say something about the oxygen systems?" But he didn't actually say, "I've hacked into the systems and I can send messages." He just said, "Oh, shall I send a message?"
Yeah, it's interesting. So until I read the show notes earlier, I hadn't seen this story in the week. And for those of you that don't know, I work in aviation. So this was an interesting story that I'm going to have to look into more. But at the moment, at the front of the bus, as we call it, which is where the pilots sit, has quite old technology, and then the back of the bus, where all of us and the cargo sits, has quite modern technology, or as in some airlines it does. And what in some cases is happening, in some cases not happening, is that the two data buses of the systems are being adequately firewalled. So that seems to be what's happened here. So I shall be interested to read this story in more detail to find out exactly what he was able to expose, because this is sort of an area that we work in at work.
It does seem like
it's interesting.
There's a distinct lack of sense of humour when it comes to anything airline transport related. You know, whether you tweet that you're, a joke that you're going to blow up an airport, or you tweet, a gag about something that's going on a plane, or you mention verbally, "Haha, I've got a bomb," as you walk through, airport security. There is a massive sense of humour failure. Arguably, to some degree, rightly, but to go this far.
Working in the industry, I can understand why there's a sense of humour failure. Airline safety is an extremely serious business, and there isn't any room for playing pranks and what have you. So I'm not surprised by the reaction in this instance. It seems perfectly reasonable. An aircraft operator simply can't run the risk of somebody compromising the avionics of the aircraft in flight. It's just they're not going to tolerate that. And I'm not surprised by their reaction in the slightest.
Well, no, with the Germanwings thing, we can see that it's not just the passengers that they have to worry about, it's the staff as well.
Quite. There's an awful lot you have to worry about on an aircraft.
All right, moving on.
A Kickstarter campaign has been launched for Endless Computers, a desktop computer designed with and for users in developing countries. The Endless computer is based on low-end Celeron processors and connects to a TV for use as a monitor. Options include Wi-Fi and 32GB or 500 gigabytes of storage. The system is running Linux and has been designed with offline as well as online use in mind. The basic wired-only model costs $169, with the most expensive priced at $229. Other perks include a buy one, give one scheme. So
is this like the similar kind of thing that was done with the
laptop? One laptop per child.
One laptop per child. With you're supporting an initiative. You're buying one, but you're supporting an initiative to put them in. Developing world.
Seems like the general idea.
When you look at the cost of this device against, say, the Intel Compute Stick, which has similar and in some regards better specifications, it's quite expensive, and I don't see how that fits the developing nations.
One thing, well, the big focus that they have is on the fact that it's the guy who started the project has travelled around with and met the people who he's making this for, and has seen that while they don't have computers, everyone's got a telly. Now, I'm not sure that that's going to be an HD telly with an HDMI port on it, but this has VGA as well. So I'm thinking that the reason for that is probably that it's focused on people plugging it into their existing lower end telly rather than having to buy a monitor or an HD TV.
But I could buy 4 Raspberry Pi 2s for the same price as the basic model.
Right, without a case, without wireless.
Well, I know. All right, okay, so I could buy 3 with cases and, wireless and...
Yeah, and this...
Right, but it's a ready-made thing that
Yeah.
looks pretty and is desirable for people to buy. I mean, I
and
can
they're
see
also
why.
creating things like an offline Wikipedia app and like a focused set of apps. It's not just like Debian and install stuff with apt-get. It's just like a more curated system with
An
a
appliance.
focused app store with just a few things.
And it's based on
it's more like
GNOME
a
Shell, isn't
more
it?
like a good question.
I think.
It might be.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's based on GNOME Shell with some changes to suit their specific markets. Well, we'll see if that... I think it's already met
It'd be nice
its
to see if this is
target.
more successful than similar things have been in the past.
Right. It's met its target, and I don't know whether they've got any stretch goals or, further targets beyond that, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Twitter has announced new policies and tools to help combat abuse on its microblogging service. The service's prohibited content definition has been extended to include anything that promotes violence against others. Twitter's support team now has tools to lock abusive accounts and automatically identify potentially abusive messages based on a number of factors that they haven't necessarily specified because people would probably try and evade them.
Yes.
But it's interesting, I saw the screenshots of this where it said your account has been locked and you have to authorize with a phone number, and then it explicitly lists the tweets that you have to delete in order to allow access to the platform again. So it's like, these are the specific tweets that we've seen that are objectionable. Delete those, and then you're back in again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time coming, though, hasn't it? The way that the story's worded, it sort of says, before this we couldn't do what we needed. We had to change the policy because we didn't have what we needed to enable us to block people. But it's their platform. It's not like it's not like there's anything stopping them just saying, well, that person's being a jerk, let's get rid of them.
It's not like it's an act of parliament or something that they're working
exactly
with.
Yeah. It's a bit odd that they've taken so long over this and the way that they're presenting it.
And it doesn't really...
But, it's a step in the right direction.
And it doesn't stop them, people creating new accounts, which seems to be what people do, is they just create a new account.
Well, they've said that that's one of these
The edge of
metrics
the
they
account.
use. One of the metrics they use for identifying automatically potentially abusive messages is like age of account, similarity to other messages, and so on.
Right, but the person who's on the receiving end of these abusive tweets is likely to see that tweet.
Yes.
And then the account is
Possibly.
suspended or deleted. And
It depends. It might be clever enough to block stuff until it's given the go-ahead. Who knows?
I'm guessing this is a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of the news.
And now we have some community news and some events. So first up, we've got locally integrated menus have been made non-default in Ubuntu Vivid, which will be 15.04 this week. In a bug filed this week by John Lee, the request was made and acknowledged by Mark Shuttleworth before landing in Ubuntu just in time for the release.
So what does this mean? What are locally integrated menus?
So the global menu at the top of the screen, the menu.
Yeah. Oh.
That's the global menu.
Yes.
And
Right.
in early on in the Vivid cycle, they added locally integrated menus, which is where the menu goes back into the application.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that was set as the default for 15.04. And
Why?
Because some people like that idea of having the menus inside the window that the application, that the menu is
Weirdos.
associated
Well, they
with.
like buttons on the other side, but that didn't happen.
Well,
Okay, go on.
So John from the design team filed the bug, and then, as you said, it was axed by Mark, which,
Which means never mind if there's a code freeze, do it.
basically, he, as the sponsor of the project and head of design, if he says something doesn't fit with the design, or he doesn't like the quality of a feature, then he's able to do that, and he's exercised that right a few times in the past to either land a new feature after the feature freeze, or to, in this case, undo a feature after the feature freeze. And, it's his toys and his park. So
Is it just me, or is it just weird? This seems like something that we moved on from a long time ago.
what, the ability for Mark to
No.
act at the last minute, or the
not
menus
having
moving
global
around?
menus. I thought that was just something that had been decided, it was done, we moved on, and some apps didn't quite fit into it yet, but on the whole, we were global menus.
Yeah, but some people like having the menu in the window, especially when you have focus follows mouse. So
Yeah.
we've talked about this numerous times, and the annoyance that is traversing
Yes.
from one window to the top of the screen and crossing, having to take a circuitous route
Losing the
around
focus.
windows and losing the focus and the menu changes. So there's a good argument for having locally
Okay.
integrated menus, but I guess it just wasn't ready, wasn't polished enough, and so it was removed. So the
Sorry,
ISO
does that mean
what?
Does that mean it was made non-default? Does that mean the intention in the long run is to go back to local menus, or does that mean the intention in the long run is to keep this as an option?
Well, it's a feature and it's configurable. It's not
Yes.
that menus will be in the window and that's the only place they can be. It's that
No. Sorry. What I meant is that you said that it wasn't quite ready and so it's been removed. But as far as you know, does that mean that the way it's going is that when it's ready, this will be the default again?
As far as I know, that's the case. But
okay, interesting.
the bug doesn't really explain that. It doesn't give more
Right.
detail about what the long-term plan is.
Okay.
So it could be that the feature is brought back as soon as the archive opens for 15.10, and the whatever that is wrong with the feature is fixed, and 15.10 lands with it enabled, or it gets removed at the last minute in 15.10. Who knows? It's one of those,
Okay.
But it was quite funny.
Cool.
To have this kind of thing, happen. I mean, it's not funny because it's busy work for people. To, some guy's got to sit there and create a patch that undoes the default. I mean, it's not a huge patch, but someone's got to do it. So it's work for someone,
Yeah.
plus work in the release team, plus, compute time to spin the ISOs up. But, that's all.
Documentation.
Yeah, it's all stuff he's paying for. So, it's up to him if he wants to do that.
Cool. And Łukasz Zemczek announced the availability of the latest over-the-air update to Ubuntu phones. In a change to previous versions, OTA 3 was phased over a 24-hour period, meaning that some users got the update before others. This was done as a trial for wider phased updates in the future.
Why?
So this is,
Why wider phased?
Well, so this was only phased over 24 hours because we've got a small pool of users. In the way that sometimes Android updates are phased. So if you browse Google Plus when a new version of Android comes out, you'll see people posting screenshots of, I got the 5 dot whatever update, and everyone else is stabbing the update button on their device and not getting the update because they phase it. They do a small percentage of users as like canaries, effectively, to see if it's broken. And if it breaks and they get a significant number of reports or crash reports or bugs reported or whatever, then they know they need to stop the line and fix it and then send out a new update. And that's what we're trialing is the same kind of thing, to send out updates to a small number of users and then grow it a small amount over time. And we can set the percentage and the time. And on this occasion, we just set it over 24 hours because we haven't got a huge number of users and we're pretty confident that the update was okay. We're more testing the phasing process. But it's quite cool. It was quite irritating for some people because I was one of the first people to get it. I don't know what the algorithm is. I have not looked at the code, but I got it as one of the first people. I posted a screenshot and then loads of people were like, hey, why have you got it? And I haven't. And that was quite funny.
Well, the battery's a lot better.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It'll last
Yeah.
a couple of days with no recharge.
So those battery improvements, I've been reading several reports on that today. Is that specific to the BQ phone, or is that a general improvement across any device that's running Ubuntu Touch?
Both. I think there were specifics in the kernel. Bear in mind that the kernel that the BQ phone ships with is 3.4. Whereas later devices will ship with 3.10 and others will ship with other versions, because they're very much tied to the Android drivers that we're using under the covers.
Right.
So, we can't just give them like 4.0 or 3.19 or something. We have to really, we're somewhat tied to the version that
So tailor the kernel to the blobs that device supports.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And so the kernel team, the Ubuntu kernel team, found some issues and had them fixed, like, files that were polling, or processes that are polling too much, files that are being written to too much, files that are being read too much, stuff that causes wake-ups. And they got the wake-ups down really, really low. So now, I can leave my phone on the desk overnight and not even bother plugging it in, and just leave it there. And I know the percentage on the battery will be pretty much the same as when I put it down 8 hours ago. It doesn't drain overnight at all.
Yes.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Doesn't drain until you switch the screen on and start using it.
Yeah.
And are you stating this as a matter of fact, or is this what you're seeing on your phone?
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's what others have reported.
Yeah, I've read the reports. I haven't updated my own phone yet, so I haven't had the benefits of this update yet.
Yeah, it's quite cool being, I woke up in the morning and took a screenshot I actually took a screenshot at midnight deliberately, so I had a nice easy bit of maths. Took a screenshot at midnight and then took another screenshot at 8 a.m. and between those two times the percentage bar on my battery gauge had not dropped at all. So, I said, 0% drop, and some, wag pointed out probably there's some fraction of a percent drop, which, I'll admit there probably was, but the gauge doesn't show, you had 0.005% battery drop, which I think is fine.
Or they put in some really clever code which waits until you've been using it for a bit and then starts to drop it slowly over time.
I like
so
that.
The flip side of this is that
That's
actually part of the reason is that we don't allow background services by default. So, on Android, you end up with a bunch of stuff, useful stuff, whether it's location detection or, going and getting your emails or your tweets, so that when you pick the phone up, it's up to date there and then. Because we don't allow many background things to happen, that's why the CPU can be, utilization can be really low over a very long time.
That background services thing, is that why if you move away from a browser window, it reloads Facebook or Twitter?
That's actually something else. That is because
it's really annoying.
It is. So what it also does, and this is something that's going to maybe come to the desktop and maybe be similarly implemented on the desktop, but won't be as constrained as this, I suspect, in the future, is on the Ubuntu phone. If you start an application and then you swipe away to something else, and you open another application and then you open something else, at some point you're going to reach the limit of RAM that's in the machine, and on the BQ phone it's 1 gig, right? And if you open a big fat web page, like Facebook or Google Plus or something like that, you're going to eat that RAM pretty quickly. As soon as you open something else, the kernel kills whatever it was that was consuming lots of RAM to make room for this new thing that you want to do. And because it's killed that off, when you swipe back to it, the app has to reload. So there's a slight delay while the app reloads, and then the page has to reload. So yes, that is frustrating. And it's kind of unique to low-end phones or mid-range phones.
And it's not entirely the fault of the way that that's working. It's part of it is the way that we've got the what's it called, the infinite scroll thing works, because that's what the clash is partly, isn't it?
What, the fact that there's so much you can have loaded in memory because you've got a very big page.
That, and it loses its place when it reloads. And
yes, yeah, and that is frustrating, and that's part of the fact of it being a web app and not being able to keep track of where you are. And the web browser is quite a chunky app, but updates are improving these things over time, and newer phones with more memory,
yes.
Meizu MX4, don't have quite so much of a problem because it just has more room for the browser to sit in memory. There you go.
Okay. And finally, in the community news and events, we have an event. The Ubuntu Online Summit is coming on the 5th to the 7th of May. There are 6 tracks: app and scope development, cloud, community, convergence, core, and show and tell. Everything takes place over Google Hangouts and IRC. Interested users and developers are encouraged to create new sessions and submit to discuss their plans for the next and subsequent releases. And there'll be a link in the show notes where you can go and do that. And somebody called Alan Pope sent me an email encouraging me to participate in that event.
Yes.
So we obviously couldn't think of a name for show and tell that began with a C.
Exactly, yeah. I was looking at that and I thought app and scope development and show and tell really should begin with a C. It's funny, we got something about C's because the core apps, the first few began with a C. It was calendar, calculator, clock, and then we started calling weather climate because it began with a C. Or weather. Yes. I think that's all the community news for now, isn't it?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
That's all for episode 7. We'll be back next week where we'll be discussing our new setup and we'll bring you some command line love.
Or even GUI love.
Oh,
no, it is
GUI
command
love?
line love. Definitely command line love.
Oh, good.
Should
I found
always
it like
be
10 minutes
command
ago.
line love.
Well, yeah. Sometimes we find really, really good GUI loves, though, and we just have to share them.
And it's just amazing.
Yes. Right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
And stop recording.